Okay, thank you. Please allow me to introduce you to the audience, Søren. I'm very proud that you take part in this session. I learned that you made your career in the military sector, but you were for between 2004 and 2010 Minister of Defense of Denmark. And right now you are a member of the European Parliament, and in this function you are also a member of the TRAN group there, Transport and Tourism, among others, and also in the Committee of Beating Cancer, which is also, from my perspective, also a topic when we talk about diesel fuel, for example. But anyway, I'm really excited that you are willing to take part in our online session here, and now the floor is yours. Start with your keynote speech, please, Søren.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for inviting me today. And I must say that I'm really pleased that I enjoyed the meeting right from the start. I think the presentation was very interesting. I'm not saying I understood everything of what has been said, but I would say that I think this presentation should be seen by all politicians dealing with the green transition. I often say that politicians live in a kind of aquarium looking out to the real world, and we are obliged to reach out to the real world, to meet the real world, and that is what I'm doing today. I think we as politicians, we should not come up with concrete solutions. We should rather formulate the problems and set goals, and how to achieve them. Well, it is then up to the market to achieve those goals we have formulated. Now, the European Union has itself the ambitious objectives of becoming climate neutral by 2050, as already mentioned in the presentation and known by everybody, and consequently has raised its 2030 climate target. Whether the objective will be achieved and what impact this will have on EU competitiveness and employment strongly depends on the design of a suite of climate policies for the coming years. Transport and future mobility will be an essential element of these policies. With increased climate targets, there is added urgency for transport to accelerate its path towards net zero emissions. To facilitate this acceleration, a broad portfolio of solutions is necessary to support the full spectrum of geographic, economic, and vocational market demands. Considering the lack of a one-size-fits-all solution, I think it is important that all low-carbon options, including alternative and renewable fuels such as biomethane, play a role in the energy transition, not only on the existing fleet, but also for new vehicles to limit the greenhouse gas emissions from the road transport sector across the EU countries. Relying on full electrification alone will not result in climate neutrality in 2050. Against this ambition, the EU Commission has outlined the Sustainable and Smart Mobility Strategy and will revise important mobility and energy legislations such as CO2 emission standards for cars, vans, and also heavy-duty vehicles. These upcoming revisions are an opportunity to implement a truly technology-neutral approach by including the contribution all options available, which also means renewable fuels such as biomethane. It is therefore important to recognize and include the renewable fuel dimension in the revision of the CO2 emission standard regulations for vehicles. Leveraging on the CO2 emission reduction only at tailpipe level, it is, as also mentioned in the presentation, it is not sufficient to ensure the shift to carbon neutral mobility. Without the contribution of renewable fuels like biomethane, the CO2 emission from the EU fleet will not be reduced fast enough to meet the target in 2030 and towards net zero objectives in 2050. Also, it is important to avoid a two-speed Europe while heading towards a carbon neutrality mobility system. People need transport, and our economy is depending on transport. Literally, wheels make Europe go around. As the study by Frontier Economics demonstrates, being based on proven engine technologies and an already structured distribution network, biomethane is one of the most cost-efficient ways to contribute to the decarbonization process as the lowest possible cost to society. Besides the cost in relation to emission reductions, it is important to consider the impact on industrial competitiveness, innovation, affordability, and employment to ensure a fair transition for all European citizens. In the Tran Committee, I'm working on the sustainable and smart mobility strategy. Here my approach is to be as technology neutral as possible. I do not believe that we as politicians should pick the winners. It might be biomethane, it might be hydrogen, it might be electric cars or something else. But what I do know is that the path to climate neutrality in 2050 will be driven by more than one technology. What I also do know is that we can't go from A to C without crossing B. In my view, many of my colleagues are trying to do that, and therefore I'm happy to engage with stakeholders like NGVA and happy to be here today. Thank you very much for listening, and I'm looking forward very much to listening to the discussion and also to be engaged in the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Søren, for your keynote speech. May I ask you a question right now, right away? You pointed out that you want to keep the field open for different solutions in order for decarbonization. How do you see it as a politician? We want Europe to become carbon neutral until 2050, but the circumstances in the countries, the purchasing power, the income, infrastructure are totally different. We have other circumstances, different circumstances in these countries. Is this also a factor that is taken into account, because the means might be different, but the target should be the same, but the mean is different. What's your view on this? Is this under discussion in your Trans Committee?
Yeah, that's a very important question, because as you rightly said, you know, the basis for doing this green transition is different in the European countries. Now, all the money that has been given mainly to the south from the north in this COVID crisis, a lot of those money will be used or should be used to the green transition. So there will be, you know, money available for countries, but of course they have to be spent on the right things, trying to reach the target 2030, 2050. There will also be, you know, infrastructure money from EU to the member countries. But I must also just flag something that worries me, because a lot of my colleagues in the parliament, they talk only about electrification. Also in my country, in Denmark, you know, they have this goal of 500,000 or 1 million electrified cars, and you know, you can start digging up the whole country. You can change the whole system, electric system, because it is not possible to do it with the system we have today, and that is why the tailpipe assumption is wrong. You have to look into it in a broader way, and I think we have a responsibility and a task to let this be known. This presentation today should be known by everybody, so that they can see. I mean, we cannot pick and choose a technology and call it the winner. We have to let the market define it. And I'm truly worried that we take wrong decisions, that we will give some advances to electrifying the fleet, and then it will cost more money. It will, send some good technologies out in the dark. Some companies are not allowed to enter the market, and we have to make sure that what we are doing is technology neutral. So we got the right solutions, and that we make sure that there is a competitiveness in the sector, so that the best technology and where it's low cost for society, low cost for the citizens, and the best for the environment and for the transition, and that is the technology that should win. And we don't know what is going to be today, and that is the reason why I think we should look to this transition in a much broader way than I think some of my colleagues want to do today.
Okay, thank you. Maybe one last question, Søren. We all have learned that the Chinese market is really dominating, meanwhile, the transportation sector. And as far as my knowledge is, even China is not only focused on one technology, but makes use of different types of propulsion system in order to keep to develop its mobility system, and also develop their infrastructure. And from my perspective, a real strength is in Europe that we have this sort of, let me say, small and medium-sized companies that have very special and dedicated technologies available. And if you go only into one direction, then you might be caught by some monopolic companies, and then we produce the next stress field, so to speak. Just what's your view on this? Am I totally wrong, or what's your view?
I think it is spot on. I mean, we have very skilled scientists in Europe. I mean, we can see that China, they try to, drag them out of Europe and make them, put them into use in China. So I mean, we have very good scientists, as you said, small and medium, and also big companies spending billions and billions of euros in research for a better future. So we must not, stop this as a politician by not accepting the fact that we cannot pick the winners, and we have to have an open market. And I must also say, even though I'm from the Liberals, I'm sure we also have to look into the market. I mean, is it still a fair market when you go look into China? I mean, China should not set the standard or the bar or pick the winners in Europe. We have to do it ourselves, not to pick the winners, but have an open market with a technology neutral approach. So there is so many things in the question you just you raised, and you gave some answer. But I fully agree in what you said about not going the monopolic way, and also that we have a market that can deal with those problems and issues if we do it right in the political world, and we set the goals, and we listen to the markets. Thanks.
Thank you, Søren. These are strong words, and I think this will make others also think about the topic. Thank you very much, Søren, now for your input into our webinar today.